Hi. A member in Hong Kong asked me for a copy of my experience as to why I started chanting, but that was 20 odd years ago and I have lost it. So she wanted a written copy, so I started to write it down on paper for her. And now that I've got this copy, I thought I would share it on YouTube with all my new friends who might not even know this story. I was educated in a convent school, and when I was a teenager, I had already been baptized as a Catholic, and after my children were born, I would take them to church every Sunday. I was a very fervent Catholic. But then when the major crisis came to my life, I was not able to find answer in the Catholic religion. So I thought it was Buddhism at that time, but in fact it was not. I just went to different temples and make offerings of roast suckling pig and steamed chicken as to bribe the bodhisattvas, but they are statues. So I was doing that. And back in 1996, I think, my mother had aneurysm in the heart, and the doctor said that she would die anytime. So she stayed home, but she could not go out. Every time she went out, her face turned red. She started to sweat, and she started to faint. So she had to stay home. And then we were all very distressed about the situation. But then one day, my auntie took a member from SGI Hong Kong to visit my mother, and this member told my mother that chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo can help her in her health. And then, as soon as my mother started chanting, she said that night she was able to sleep very well, and her health improved a lot, and she could go out and she had more energy. And she asked me to chant. She said, "Lydia, you have a very hard life, so why don't you start chanting so your life would be better?" But already at that time, I've changed from Catholic religion to going to the temples and make offerings to the bodhisattvas. So I said, "Never you mind it. You do your own chanting and I'll do my own thing." So, but then at that time, I had an interior design business, and there was a project which I had worked on for over a year. And then at the end, when I was asking the client to pay me, the client would not pay. And she used all sorts of excuses to pick on little things so that she didn't have to pay. For example, she's got a marble floor which had been used for over 20 years. And instead of paying for refinishing, she just asked me to polish with marble polish to restore the shine. Of course, this cannot be done. And my workers had refused to this unreasonable request, so I had to stay on to this project, this site, and polish the floor myself. So at the end, she accepted it, but she still wouldn't pay. Now, it was nearing Chinese New Year, and according to the Chinese tradition, all debts must be paid before Chinese New Year. So I went to her home with two of my workers, a carpenter and a mason. And the two guys, two of them were over 40 years old, and one of them cried in front of my client. And he said, "Mrs. Lau, could you please pay Miss Leung so she can pay us? We need the money for the Chinese New Year. I've got a family, I've got a wife, I've got children, and I've got debts to pay also." And I think this touched the client's heart. And then she said, "Okay, I'm going to pay her tomorrow." So we were all very happy. So the next day, thinking that she had paid me, I had written all the checks to pay all my workers. That was the day, Chinese New Year's Eve, okay? And then, because I thought all the problem was solved, I was very happy, and I had buffet lunch with my sister at the top floor of the Hopewell Center. It was a revolving restaurant, very nice restaurant. So we were celebrating, but then at 3:30 in the afternoon, my bank called me, and the banker said, "Miss Leung, the check your client paid in had been bounced. At that time, my whole face turned pale, and I didn't know what to do. So I took a taxi and rushed to United Center, which was my client's office. I was there at 4 o'clock. And when my client saw me, she asked me what was going on, and I told her that the check had been bounced. And she said, "Oh, is that right? I didn't know it. So let me talk to my bank manager and see what happened." "Well, you just wait." So I waited at the reception for about 45 minutes. And at 4:45, she came out and she said, "My bank manager had left for the New Year's Eve to celebrate. I can't help you anymore. So maybe when the holiday ends, if he comes back to work, then I can check what's going on." So I had no choice, but I just went home. But I was desperate, and I didn't know what to do. I was thinking of two kinds of solutions. Number one is to try to get a lawyer to sue her. But then this process is going to take long time. And the money I will pay on the lawsuit could end up more than the money that she would be paying me. So that was not a way to go. So another way I thought of doing was to get a debt collector. But then my friend told me that the debt collectors sometimes uses violence. And if they hurt my client, then I would be in jail. I would be in serious trouble. So I honestly was at a loss as to what to do. And I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I just stayed home and I didn't want to do anything. I walked along the corridor back and forth, not knowing where I'm heading, what I'm doing. My mind was all blank. And then on the second day of the new year, my sister invited me out for dinner. And then she said, "Lydia, why don't you start chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo?" Because mother's condition was doing better and better with this chanting. And so I started to think about it. And then the next day, which was the third day of the Chinese New Year, I started to call the member who visited my mother to teach her chanting. And this member was, as all other SGI members, very, very sincere and ready to help. So she invited me to see her at lunchtime, to join her parents for lunch. And she told me that by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, my client would pay me. Now, at that time, I was a very, very snobbish person, stubborn and snobbish. So I looked at her. In my mind, I thought, you don't know me and you don't know my client. How can you be so sure that by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, my client would pay me? But then, of course, I didn't say it out. I was just thinking inside. And this member was very, very generous. She gave me prayer beads and a card which says Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and she taught me how to chant the Go Hansen. So when I went home, I started to chant and chant and chant. The next day, which was the fourth day of the Chinese New Year, and that was the end of the holidays, when all businesses would be open, I called up my client at about 11 o'clock and asked her whether she had talked to a banker and what is going to happen. And then she said, "My banker hasn't come back from holidays. Why don't you wait? I cannot do anything for you." And again, I didn't know what to do. So I became very, very anxious, and I felt very helpless. So again, I called up this SGI member whom I met the day before on the third day of the Chinese New Year, and then she said, "You haven't done enough chanting. If you chant enough, your client would pay you." So with nothing else better to do, I started to chant every minute of the day in and day out, for 3-4 days. And on the 7th day of the new year, a miracle happened. This client called me up. and asked me to go and pick up a check. You know, I had used 6 months to ask her for payment, and it was not successful. But with this chanting, only 4 days of chanting, the client would call me and ask me to pick up a check. Of course, I rushed to her office and picked up a check and banked it, and it was okay. But even after I got my money, I did not stop chanting and practicing. Now, this member told me that the power of chanting is very, very, very strong. But then we have to practice, and we have to do kosan rufu. That is, we have to continue to encourage people to chant. And then she said that this practice can help us change karma. I know that my karma was really, really bad. So I took it on. I started to continue to chant, and she said that you have to contribute to SGI and then activities. You have to attend all meetings and help as many people as you can, encouraging them to chant, and then explaining to them about this practice. I did it all. Okay? I had attended all SGI meetings that I know of, and I chant every day, morning and evening, and then I did a lot of kosan rufu to encourage people to chant, and I even went to the center to help cleaning the center. Now, during my 20-odd years of practice, I had gone through lots and lots of challenges and obstacles. But with my chanting and faith in the Gohonsen, I was able to overcome all of my obstacles and challenges, and my life is getting better and better. From an angry, unhappy, cold, and uncaring person, I have now become a warm, happy, caring, and lucky person. The luck I get is from all my efforts in the Buddhist practice: chanting, encouraging people to chant, kosan rufu, and whenever SGI is in need, I would say yes. And I owe all my good fortune and my changing of karma, I owe it all to the teachings of Nichiren Buddhism and President Ikeda, and the support and teachings from all SGI members and all my fellow members in Australia, Hong Kong, Toronto, Vancouver, all over the world. Thank you.